Darts is often seen as a calm sport. Players stand still. The throws look smooth. The board never moves. But that quiet setup hides a lot of pressure. The lights are blinding, the crowds are loud, the stakes are high. One missed dart can flip everything. When pride, history, and strong personalities collide, rivalries are born. And sometimes those rivalries push players right to the edge. Over the years, darts has seen some seriously intense matchups. Most never turned physical, but the tension was impossible to miss. Sharp words, cold stares, angry gestures, awkward handshakes. Those moments added drama, emotion, and edge, and they helped turn darts into the global sport it is today. John Lowe versus Eric Bristow. John Lowe and Eric Bristow were not just rivals. They were the foundation of modern professional darts. Their rivalry began in the late 1970s, around the time the World Darts Championship first started. At that point, darts was still mainly a pub game. It lacked excitement. For television. Lowe and Bristow changed that completely. Both players were highly skilled and evenly matched. Their matches were close, tense, and emotional. Bristow held the overall edge, winning 19 of their 31 meetings, but many matches could have gone either way. What made this rivalry special was the contrast in personality. John Lowe was calm, quiet, and controlled. Eric Bristow was loud, confident, and aggressive. Fans quickly picked sides. Some admired Lowe's discipline. Others loved Bristow's swagger. Their competitive matches brought drama, arguments, and strong reactions from crowds. This rivalry helped turn darts into a sport people wanted to watch on television. Without Lowe versus Bristow, darts may never have reached the stage it enjoys today. Phil Taylor versus Raymond van Barneveld. Phil Taylor and Raymond van Barneveld shared one of the longest and most famous rivalries in darts history. Taylor dominated darts for years. Van Barneveld was one of the few players who could regularly challenge him on the biggest stages. Their matches were always high quality, but usually respectful. That changed after the 2012 World Darts Championship semifinal. Taylor won the match 6-4. After the final dart, Van Barneveld offered what Taylor felt was an overly strong handshake. Taylor reacted badly. Words were exchanged. There was pushing as both players left the stage. It shocked fans. Taylor was clearly upset. Van Barneveld looked confused by the reaction. The tension followed them for years. They later calmed things down through text messages, but the rivalry never felt relaxed again. Every match after that carried extra tension until Taylor retired in early 2018. Peter Wright versus Michael van Gerwen. Peter Wright and Michael van Gerwen represent two very different styles of darts. Wright is colorful, loud, and loves entertaining the crowd. Van Gerwen is focused, intense, and hates distractions. That clash exploded during the 2015 Premier League. During a key moment, Wright tried to hype up the crowd before throwing for the bull. Van Gerwen clearly disliked it. Wright missed. He lost the match. The tension was visible throughout. There was no shouting, but the looks told the story. The handshake at the end was weak and delayed. Wright walked off angry. Van Gerwen dominated most of their early meetings. But Wright changed the story in the 2020 World Championship final, beating Van Gerwen 7-3 to win his first world title at age 49. That win turned their rivalry into one of darts' most memorable stories. Phil Taylor versus Adrian Lewis. Phil Taylor and Adrian Lewis shared a hometown and a long history. Early on, Lewis was seen as Taylor's successor. That relationship slowly broke apart. They played 72 times, with Taylor winning 55 matches. The imbalance created tension. Lewis grew frustrated with being called Taylor's protege. Lewis publicly rejected that label. Taylor responded with his own comments. The relationship collapsed. Although Taylor later said they still got along, the rivalry never felt the same. Matches between them were tense, cold, and emotionally charged. Adrian Lewis versus Peter Manley. The 2006 World Championship quarterfinal between Adrian Lewis and Peter Manley remains one of the most explosive matches darts has ever seen. Peter Manley already had a reputation for slowing games down and using mind games to unsettle opponents. He believed pressure was just as important as scoring power. Adrian Lewis was young, talented, and still learning how to control emotions on the big stage. Manley targeted that weakness. During the match, Lewis accused Manley of swearing while he was throwing, which Lewis believed was deliberate distraction. Officials were called, the crowd grew louder, and the tension kept rising. As the match slipped away and Lewis fell 3-1 behind, frustration turned into anger. Lewis actually walked off the stage to cool down, something rarely seen at that level. The match stopped. Players, referees, and officials stood waiting. It felt less like a darts match and more like a boiling argument about to explode. Although Manley won, the match became famous for showing how mental pressure can push even gifted players to the edge. Michael van Gerwen versus Rob Cross. When Michael van Gerwen faced Rob Cross at the 2016 UK Open, the match looked like a routine win. Van Gerwen was already one of the most feared players in the world. Cross at that time was still an amateur electrician playing without expectations. Van Gerwen won 9-5, but something unexpected happened. Cross refused to be overawed. He scored heavily, stayed calm, and earned respect instantly. That single performance changed his life. Sponsors noticed. Opportunities followed. 2 years later, the story reached its peak. At the 2018 World Championship semifinal, Cross stunned the world by beating Van Gerwen 6-5 in a classic match. He then went on to win the title in his very first professional season. Their rivalry became one of quiet tension. Van Gerwen still leads the head-to-head record, but Cross proved that he belonged at the very top, and Van Gerwen never underestimated him again. Gary Anderson versus Peter Wright. Gary Anderson and Peter Wright share nationality, skill, and ambition. Both are Scottish. Both want to be number one. Their rivalry is calm on the surface but intense underneath. Peter Wright's colorful hair and outfits sometimes distract from how ruthless he is as a competitor. Anderson, known for smooth throwing and calm behavior, respects Wright but never takes matches lightly. In 2019, Wright beat Anderson 4 times in Players' Championship events, a surprising run that showed how evenly matched they were. Anderson still leads overall, but the rivalry is built on constant high-quality battles rather than shouting or drama. This rivalry proves that tension does not always need anger to be real. Gary Anderson versus Daryl Gurney. The rivalry between Gary, Anderson and Daryl Gurney grew sharper with every meeting. Anderson accused Gurney of distracting behavior, while Gurney responded with loud celebrations and heavy crowd interaction. The tension exploded during a Grand Slam final. Celebrations became excessive. Looks turned into words. Words turned into physical contact. Officials had to step in as tempers boiled over on live television. After the match, both players were fined. The incident showed how emotional pressure, combined with high stakes, can turn competitive fire into open conflict. Adrian Lewis versus James Wade. The World Grand Prix final between Adrian Lewis and James Wade showed that tension does not end when the last dart is thrown. During the match, Lewis complained about movement during his throw. Wade reacted sharply, refusing to back down. Even after the final dart, the argument continued on stage. The trophy was presented, cameras were rolling, and yet both players were still visibly angry. It was a clear reminder that finals carry emotional weight that does not disappear instantly, even after victory or defeat. Phil Taylor versus Kevin Painter. Phil Taylor was not just the greatest scorer in darts history. He was also a master of mind games. Kevin Painter often found himself on the wrong side of those battles. In one famous moment, Taylor hit a perfect dart at double 50 while already well ahead. The crowd roared. Painter reacted angrily. Words were exchanged. Insults followed. Taylor thrived on moments like that. Frustrating opponents mentally was part of his dominance, and Painter felt that pressure more than once. Gerwyn Price versus Daryl Gurney. Gerwyn Price and Daryl Gurney are both emotional, aggressive competitors. When they met, calm was never expected. Powerful celebrations led to an intense handshake that quickly turned hostile. Pushing followed. Officials rushed in. The moment was replayed endlessly across darts media. Both players were fined, and the incident became one of the most talked about confrontations in modern darts. Gerwyn Price versus Gary Anderson. This rivalry shocked fans because of friendship. Price and Anderson were close away from the stage. That made their Grand Slam final clash even more dramatic. Price celebrated loudly. Anderson became irritated. A collision followed. Anderson pushed Price in a moment of anger. Price went on to win the match. Both players were fine. Their friendship survived, but the match showed that competition can overpower personal bonds when titles are on the line. Darts rivalries create stories. They add emotion. They bring fans back. Without rivalry, darts would feel flat. These moments made darts exciting, unpredictable, and human. Darts has never been about punches or brawls. It has always been about tension, pride, and control. The rivalries and clashes in this sport show what happens when pressure meets personality. These moments didn't damage darts. They helped grow it. And as long as darts is played under bright lights with roaring crowds, rivalries will always exist.